Folks, most people don't believe me when I tell them that the father of African American history and of Black History Month, he's from West Virginia. And so here I am with his statue. This is Carter Woodson. Join us for this episode. We're going to talk all about Carter Woodson, his life and times here in West Virginia, and the impact that he had on African American history in the United States. Hey y'all, my name is Adina Barnett Miller, but I'm known to my students as Mrs. B. I've been passionate about West Virginia history for as long as I can remember, but my mom would tell you it all started when I was 3 years old and she bought me a West Virginia Counties puzzle at Gino's Pizza. I've taught history in Ripley, West Virginia for over 20 years now, and I'm an adjunct professor who teaches college West Virginia history to high school students. Please join me for West Virginia History with Mrs. B, a field trip across the Mountain State to walk in the footsteps of those who came before us. Hey y'all, it's West Virginia History with Mrs. B, and I am in Huntington, West Virginia, on the corner of Hal Greer Boulevard and 9th Street, which has now been renamed Carter G. Woodson Boulevard. And so we're going to talk a little bit about Carter Woodson, and this is a historical sign that has been placed here to talk about Carter Woodson. So Carter Godwin Woodson is a historian, author, an educator. He was the founder of the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History in 1915, and he began his Journal of Negro History in 1916. In 1926, he began Negro History Week, which later became Black History Month. He's a graduate, and he was later principal of Douglas High School, which was a segregated Black high school here in Huntington, West Virginia. And he also will be a dean and a professor at West Virginia State College.
Yay.
He's the second African American to earn a PhD from Harvard, and he was born in 1875 and he died in 1850. So I'm going to tell you a lot more detail about Carter Woodson when we go stand in front of his statue, which is right over there. So we are standing with one of my heroes, like huge hero, Carter G. Woodson, and you're probably wondering why there's a statue to Carter Woodson in Huntington, West Virginia, and that's because he's going to spend actually a lot of time here in Huntington, West Virginia. So he is going to be born in 1875 to parents who have been formerly enslaved in Virginia, in Buckingham County, Virginia, and so by the early 1890s, his family realizes there's no money or future in agriculture in Virginia, and so they hear about these jobs in West Virginia in the railroad industry and in the coal industry, and so they're going to move to Fayette County, West Virginia, and at first they're going to work in the railroads, and then eventually they're going to get jobs in the mines in a town called Nuttleburg. Nuttleburg is now part of what is the New River Gorge National Park, and so it is a ghost town, but it's being protected by the National Park Service. If you ever want to go down there, you definitely should. There's some really cool pieces of history that have been left behind. Carter Woodson saw working in the mines, working on the railroads as a means to an end. He wanted to be educated. There was no high school for Black students in Fayette County, West Virginia, and so he saved 4 years so he could be able to come and go to high school. And so he is going to come eventually, when he gets enough money, to Huntington, West Virginia, and he's going to attend high school at Douglas High School, which is named for Frederick Douglass. And he is so smart, so accelerated, he's going to graduate from high school in like 2 years. And so after he graduates from high school, he is going to go away to college at Berea, which is down in Kentucky. It is a school that is established by abolitionists, and they allow for interracial education. It's also a work school, so you learn practical skills and you work while you're going to school. And this is going to be something that Carter Woodson believes in deeply, that African Americans need to learn practical skills as well as academic practices and all the different disciplines. And so he is going to major in history and education, and eventually even with, you know, some starts and stops. He will graduate with his undergraduate degree in history. He will eventually, when he graduates, he comes back to Fayette County, and he's going to teach in a 1 through 8 schoolhouse in Winona and Fayette County and teach black children. And then he will eventually come back to Huntington, and he's going to be principal at Douglas High School, where he was a student, which is so cool. And by the way, this statue is where it is because they say he's looking at where the original school was, which is just that way. And so after he comes back here, he knows he wants to go back to college to get his master's and PhD, because his passion is history, and he wants to be able to not only teach history, but he wants to be able to write history. And so he is going to spend a period of time after the Spanish-American War teaching Filipino children in the Philippines, and then he's eventually going to come back, and he's going to go to Harvard University, and he is going to get his PhD in history at Harvard. He will eventually graduate in 1912, but here's what you really got to get out of this experience at Harvard. Carter Woodson is going to be the second African American in history to earn a PhD from Harvard. The first was W.E.B. Du Bois, who you all know, at least I hope you know, from learning African American history. He was a prolific leader within the black rights community, one of the founders of the NAACP, amazing human being. And so Carter Woodson comes right after him. And so Carter Woodson says, I want to write about black history. And his white professors tell him black history is not history. And so basically they pigeonhole him into telling the stories of white people and white narratives. And so one thing that Carter Woodson and I totally have in common is we wrote the same thesis. And so he is going to write his dissertation on the sectional crisis leading to the creation of the state of West Virginia, which is what I wrote about as well from my master's thesis. And so it's going to take him a period of time to graduate. He does graduate in 1912, but he's like, his heart's not in it, because he wants to tell the stories of African Americans, and especially tell the stories of African Americans from West Virginia and Virginia. And he's told black history is not history. And so once he leaves Harvard, he's going to move to Washington, D.C., and he's going to teach in black classrooms in the public school system in Washington, D.C. At one point, he's even going to teach at Howard University. While he's in D.C., he's going to found his journal for Negro History, which is now the Journal for African American History. It's still being published to this day. And his goal is not only to publish black historians telling black history, but he's also going to publish white historians who are being told by like the white supremacists that exist within academia, like, this is too controversial, we're not going to publish this. So he's publishing both black authors, about black historians, as well as white historians who are talking about African American history. And so in 1920, he is going to come home for a period of time, and he's going to be the academic dean at what is now West Virginia State University. It was West Virginia Colored Institute at that time. He is going to increase enrollment in history and interest in history at West Virginia State. He really changes the culture down there to get people interested in history. After that time, he's going to spend in institute. He's going to go back to Washington, D.C. He's going to open up his Institute for Black History, and he is not going to teach again after he leaves West Virginia State. And so he's going to live the rest of his life in Washington, D.C., publishing his journal, publishing a bulletin on African American history. And in 1926, he's going to establish what was called Black History Week. And he's going to reach out to people all over the country and ask them to celebrate Black History Week. And Black History Week will eventually become what is now Black History Month, which we celebrate in the month of February. It's going to take 50 years from that first push in 1926 for when he starts Black History Week to have Black History Month instituted in all 50 states in the United States. It's going to be Gerald Ford who names it as part of the bicentennial celebration here in the United States. And so Carter Woodson, he was telling stories that needed to be told. He was telling what we talk about as hidden history or whitewashed history. He wanted to be able to tell the true history. And so that's why he's such a hero of mine, because he said, you know, forget you people at Harvard. I'm going to do this on my own, and I'm going to ensure that these stories are preserved and that they're told. And it's, you know, it's powerful that that's someone from Appalachia who did that, whose experiences compelled him to tell those stories. And so what's really cool is we're still celebrating Black History Month today. His Journal of African American History is still being published to this day. There are monuments to him in Washington, D.C., and his headquarters is now controlled by the National Park Service, and you can go take tours of it. But I think that we have to, the reason I want to tell this story is because the average West Virginian doesn't know this story. The story that they're taught in West Virginia history is a very whitewashed one. And you got to remember, there are a lot of African Americans who are going to move into West Virginia to work in the coal industry and to work in other industries. And their stories need to be told. And Carter Woodson knew that. And he made it a priority. You know, the very first stories he recorded were of Black coal miners down in Fayette County, and those have been preserved for perpetuity because he knew that Black history was history. He knew that Appalachian history was history, and that all of these stories needed to be told. So I hope that you've fallen in love with Carter Woodson like I have. He is such a hero of mine. He is such an amazing human being. If I could go back and have dinner with just about anybody, he's going to be in probably the top 5 or 10 because he just made such an impact on this country. And the fact that most West Virginians don't even know his name, nor do they know his accomplishments or what he's done to preserve history, not just Black history, history, because all history is history. This is such an important story that needs to be told. So I hope that you learn a little bit and that you share this with someone that you know so that they can learn a little bit more as well. Thank you for tuning in, and don't forget Carter Woodson. Every time you hear Black History Month, think Carter Woodson and think West Virginia. Thank you. Thanks, y'all, for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe to West Virginia History with Mrs. B on both Facebook and YouTube.